What are some things that rich ultra-rich people do which the average person doesn't even consider? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. Hasabrinamon. Years ago, I read an article about someone whose business was keeping ultra-rich people's cars ready to go. As in, if you have a Ferrari in multiple cities, they keep it fueled up, oil changed, etc., and drive it around the block once a week or so, and have it waiting at the airport when the owner flies into town. Answer: interesting, I am not wealthy, but I do keep my reasonably priced classic car in a classic car storage facility that houses mind-blowing exotics. My car is orders of magnitude less valuable than most anything there. I was out of town and got a message from the garage stating that they noticed my car's inspection was coming due soon, and if they can run it to one of their shops for a quick pass as a courtesy. I was floored and felt so strange taking them up on the offer. No taking a day off work, calling places to schedule. It was just done. It was so nice to have that taken care of, but it blew me away since that is the life of the ultra-wealthy, nearly every day with everything. Story 2. There are several single-family-owned Montessori schools, like a family office put together an entire mini-school just for their kids and their friends' kids. It became a thing to do when the pandemic hit. Some of them are 100 mobile too, like teaching on the Jital over the world. Answer: my family is in education and has known a couple people who've ended up in the orbit of the super rich. My sister graduated with her master's at a time when our state had a hiring freeze. My sister was one of few people hired right before it went into effect. She had a friend that ended up being a nanny in LA. One couple she worked for had like 4 nannies, 3 for the days for each kid, 1 for the nights. That couple had huge issues with paparazzi, so the nannies had to usually take the kids shopping for school unless the parents were able to sneak around. My sister's friend ended up moving on to even richer people whose lives were quieter because they didn't have media attention, paid more, and the people could live more like people. Also knew someone who took a year off from his normal teaching gig because some ultra-wealthy guy wanted to yacht around the world with his kids, so he wanted private tutors. The guy brought his kids along and basically had a one-room schoolroom on a super yacht. Story 3. I live near Scottsdale with a lot of wealthy people. They constantly remodel their vacation homes, so there's always great stuff. I bought a brand new Viking refrigerator from Craigslist, still wrapped. It's 8 feet tall, 36. The homeowners decided they wanted a double refrigerator instead. They've owned the home 2 years, still haven't stayed a night there. The refrigerator retails for $18K. I got it for $1,500. Story 4. My mom's boss buys a brand new top-of-the-range car almost every year and gives a year-old one to one of his kids or family members. I jokingly asked for one. Truth is, I doubt I could even afford the insurance, let alone maintenance and fuel. Story 5. I have several rich friends who are my age, 50s, and don't work. Their biggest perk is attending every concert and show and buying front row. Not just our area, but if their favorite band is playing across the country, they fly with their kids there and spend the weekend. Answer: I was amazed to discover that some well-off people buy season tickets for theaters. So they have the same seat for every show, usually the best seats in the house. Edited to add, I discovered this by talking to people I was sitting next to when I went to shows in a few different venues. In those venues, season tickets were $1,500 a year minimum, as we discovered when my DH explored buying me one for my birthday. Sadly, that was well out of our budget. Plus, they would usually buy a pair of tickets. Story 6. I dated a girl from a super rich family for a couple years, and every spring her entire family would go through their closets and donate 90 of their wardrobe, and then go out and drop $20K on entirely new clothes for the year, because they had to have the new season of everything. As someone who grew up wearing clothes till they fell apart and patching them if they still fit, this blew my mind. Getting rid of perfectly good clothes because they were last season is just insane to me. Story 7. Paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for golf course memberships. I photograph luxury homes in the most exclusive golf course neighborhoods in my state. I know of one neighborhood where membership runs $400K and there's a wait list of people wanting to join. Story 8. They call boutique stores ahead of time to say they are coming in on date X. The boutique high-end store pulls every super expensive items, complete with accessories on a rolling rack to have ready. I worked in a high-end store back in the day. If it was on sale, they pulled the sale tag off and literally tried to get rid of all the expensive items. Think layering to upsell. Answer: I'm a coin collector. The shop I went to, I never spent a lot, but I got on well with the owner. I come in one Sunday and he's grinning. Yesterday was good business. What? You're closed on Saturdays, he tells me. No, look at the sign on the door. I'd never noticed it said closed to the public Saturdays. And he shows me the receipt he had customers who would call him up like, Jack, I'm in town next week. See you on Saturday. Make sure the whiskey rocks are cold. And they just come in and chat and flip through the boxes. I'll have this. I'll have that. It was ridiculous what was on that receipt, like a dozen 1-Oz gold coins, 10 rolls of uncirculated silver coins, a 10 Oz gold bar, 2 bricks of 100 mint banknotes with consecutive serial numbers. And he further explained sometimes these guys would call him up like, yeah, Jack, I know, it's 11 p.m. You're probably in bed, but Jack, you gotta tell me you have some Krugerrands. The Saudi prince is coming, and I'm at the Royal Palazzo Roni Hotel, Napoleon Suite. Come on, Jack. My driver will pick you up. You can open late tomorrow. Come on. I'll pay 15 over market price. And the dude would get out of bed, call up some other dealer, get the gold bars or whatever, and show up and drop them off to some dude. That's why the whole boutique scene is so amusing. Like you want to have breakfast at Tiffany's, huh? Haha, no can do. Oh wait, you're Bill Gates. You would like to have a continental breakfast buffet set up at Tiffany's? So you can eat here whilst Melinda browses the collection. Why, certainly, Mr. Gates. Story 9. Have assistants do things we wouldn't dream of doing. I know a rich person who hired a personal assistant to find a land to purchase. Here are the criteria. Forested land by the sea, cliffs, quiet area, but with cell reception, and make it so that it isn't an area with lots of boat traffic, so I can take my bath while looking out at sea. Story 10. A former client of mine, sadly, recently deceased, hashad 2 yachts moored in the south of France next to each other. One was fast, one was slow. He'd take the fast one down to Saint-Tropez and have the other one follow because it was more comfortable. He'd have lunch in one of his restaurants there, then relax on the slow yacht for the day. Sometimes he'd stay overnight, sometimes not. But he'd take the fast yacht back to home port. The captains would hand out thousands to get the best berths in Saint-Tropez. He literally used the yachts like his taxi. He would do the same to his house in Portofino, but that was usually a week or so trip. His recent passing made global headlines to give an idea of the dosh. But to be fair, his tax contributions to the local economy literally changed the small port town he lived in. He created public parks, golf and tennis courts, a horse riding club, gym facilities, all well-maintained, fully staffed with great summer programs for the kids. Further works improved the roads, sidewalks, public beaches, and walking hiking paths. He bought a disused old church and turned it into a public museum, etc. He literally contributed so much to the local economy that they no longer charge for public parking anywhere. It's all free, all year round. That's how you're supposed to trillionaire. Story 11. Buying 2 1,500 cashmere sequined short-sleeve sweaters so that your tailor can cut up one sweater and make sleeves out of it because the top doesn't come in a long-sleeve version. Source. I used to work for a very wealthy retired actress who did this. I had to purchase the sweaters for her and schedule the tailor. Story 12. Their vacation homes are stocked with regionally appropriate attire, mountain clothes, beach clothes, etc. They also keep luxury vehicles at these homes that most people could only dream of owning and using as a daily driver. Answer. Yup, my grandparents were friends with a very rich, retired couple. They had a vacation home in a large southern city. My parents mentioned wanting to visit that city. My grandparents made a call, and we were told to just pick some dates, and the house was ours. There was a new SUV in the garage. We were told to just leave the house, however, just walk away, and their normal maid service would be a post-visit cleaning and setup for the next time the house was needed. When we arrived, the maids had turned down the beds, had flowers in the kitchen, there was a cheese plate in the fridge for us, beers, soda, and water, a nice saying to help ourselves to the liquor cabinet, and a number for the local maids if we had any questions. It was darn impressive. This wasn't a mansion, just a more normal 5-bed, 4K square foot type place, but I felt like a king. Story 13. TLDR, man imported an ancient monastery door to use on his ranch home. I worked on a ranch just south of Crested Butte. CEO. If you aren't a billionaire, don't even think about looking at buying a home there. The owner of the ranch bought the front door from a Tibetan monastery and flew it to the U.S. to use as his front door on his main house. It was all ornamentally hand-carved, like 3,000 Wurzers old, approx 12, the X6 X2S, and weighed tons upon tons upon tons. Not even the cost of the door itself, but the shipping alone must have been astronomical, and this was just his front door on his main house. There must have been over 10 buildings on the property. I've seen worked on many billionaire mansions all over CO, and this dude's ranch is the nicest I've ever seen. Story 14. During COVID, I worked as a private jet charter broker. We had a guy, a British member of the House of Lords no less, that explained that sod the quarantine restrictions, I need to fly to Monaco every other week to ensure I keep my tax residency in Monaco and not in the UK. I also had someone who'd regularly fly between London and Baku, Azerbaijan, ask if they could take a short stop off in Dubai, which is very much not on the way, to get their passports stamped to ensure they maintain their residency there. They also once showed up with well over half a ton of luggage that they described as, oh, just some stuff we picked up shopping. You won't be surprised to hear that they were very confused when we advised them that 27 boxes and suitcases of stuff won't fit on an aircraft that we'd repeatedly told them only had space for about 10-12 suitcases. Finally, we had a Russian guy ask us to call his Caribbean destination island airport and ask if they could ensure that his flight was not randomly selected for a COVID test, as he didn't have time to complete the quarantine if he had been positive. He didn't care whether he had the virus, just that getting caught with it might fudge up his travel plans in like July 2020. Story 15. Concierge private specialized medical care. If they have a special or chronic condition, say kidney failure, they'll have a dialysis ward installed in their home with a private nephrologist, etc. Or end up hiring someone who will end up donating an organ to them, or cancer treatments set up in home, etc., or have an MRI installed in their home, etc. Answer, this so true and wild. My friend's dad worked in the rich people private medical suites of a major hospital in a nearby city. He was a very cheerful and well-liked guy. Some patients hired him privately in addition to the regular coordinators to help oversee the home setup for discharge and other things. He was paid very well on the audition. One patient literally built an addition in their mansion castle to create a medical center, and it included a private entrance and break room for staff so they wouldn't need to come through the main house. It was like they built a mini hospital. All top-of-the-line machines, equipment, etc. They are not supposed to accept direct gifts from patients, but it was his marriage anniversary coming up, and he would be taking some days off for a beach trip to celebrate. He told one of his patients this as just a why he wouldn't be in for a few days, and they gave him the name and number of their personal jeweler for a wife gift. The jeweler gave him an incredible discount, like an insane discount. He has also told stories that some patients have helped doctors or staff they like by making a call to help the doctor's kids get into private schools or elite country clubs, etc. Story 16. When they wanted an addition to their Hamptons house, they couldn't get a start date from the super busy local contractors, so they rented a nearby house and hired a company from Maine to move in there and do the addition. Paid for like a dozen workers to live in a house in the Hamptons until the addition was done, like over a year. Story 17. Steve Jobs decided he didn't like having a license plate because he could be identified by it and it kept getting stolen. So he called up the Mercedes dealer and made a deal with them. In CA, it was legal to drive a car with no license plate for 30 days after you get it. So once a month, they'd show up and replace his car with an identical new Mercedes, so he'd never have a car for more than 30 days and could effectively drive around forever with no license plate. Story 18. I've been a chef for 20 years. I've dealt with this a bit, buying out a restaurant for several days in case they wanted to just drop in during their vacation with no wait times at all. We charged $50,000 per meal service they wanted to buy out. Made us $300K over 3 days. They never showed up, but went to our sister restaurant across the river in Miami. Bottle service is insane. We know this already, but you have no idea. Aside from paying $2,000 for a bottle of Grey Goose with mixers, they will spend several thousand on Ace of Spades or Crystal and just throw $200,000 on the black card for one night of drinking. This extends to champagne, not just for drinking, but for the act of spraying on each other but on the scantily clad girls, pretending to like you for $25 guaranteed tip. This includes a special champagne menu with an assortment of spray packages. You can buy one bottle of Dom P to drink band spray around for $1,000, or you can order whole entire cases of Crystal just to spray on each other for $50,000 a case. I've seen poolside bungalows order several cases for pool parties. Story 19. Buying a multi-million-dollar home nearby where they're building a bigger multi-million-dollar home so they can be nearby during construction. Dozens of spare current tech devices in case they lose one, don't want to pack one, or it dies. Buying a quarry so they can guarantee all of the stone in their home is the same. Story 20. I think a theme I'm seeing is spending exorbitant amounts of money to avoid small inconveniences. My boss would get his assistant to book flights, then call every restaurant for reservations, then ask all his friends which restaurant is best, then cancel all reservations but the one he chose, then cancel the flights and book them closer to his reservation, then book multiple hotels, then ask his friends which hotel was best, then cancel all hotels except the one he chose, then cancel and rebook flights to be closer to his reservations. And he would book an extra day at the hotel so when he arrived, he could go immediately to his room instead of waiting for check-in time. He would spend thousands of extra dollars every time he went on a trip to avoid the minor inconvenience of having to A, be organized, and B, wait for anything during his trip. Oh, and C, he would pay his assistant $100,000 a year and not trust her to do something like, book me a trip to Berlin at the best hotel and best restaurant. Make sure I don't have to wait around for anything. Story 21. My friend was head of housekeeping for a rich family. Before traveling, she would have to bring any clothing and suitcases to the dry cleaners where everything was freshly pressed, folded, and tissue paper placed in between each item. Even the underwear. Story 22. Request off-menu or off-topic things. For example, calling down to the concierge at a hotel and say you want a romantic couple setup down by the pool, or handing your credit card to the usher at a theater and ask them to go by and deliver you a cocktail. Yes, I have seen both these things. Story 23. Reading these comments is crazy. I feel privileged because my grandparents helped me out with paying my rent for a couple months while unemployed and job searching. But for my partner, they became homeless at age 18 after fleeing domestic violence, has no family to turn to for money, and for them not working could never be an option unless they wanted to go back to living in a halfway house. I sometimes get jealous of my one roommate because they have a parent who works at Kaiser, and so they get to have good health insurance, and they also can afford to eat takeout often, while I can't. In the end, we are all three of us sharing the same tiny apartment, arguing about who has it worse or better, while there are people out here who own private islands and casually fly to Paris for lunch like it's nothing. Story 24. My SIL's cousin's family is very rich. They have 2 basketball courts inside their house. That's how massive it is. Inside the house, they bought all the lots next to their mansion and built a park just for their family so they wouldn't need to be near anyone. I got vertigo when I walked into the gym. It was so large. My brain couldn't handle that I was inside such a large space that was also inside a house, and it couldn't understand what it was looking at, and then it processed it. That experience is burned in my memory. I was looking for a bathroom when I stumbled on it. Story 25. Back in the early 1000s, I used to work with family offices, some of which dealt with the UH&W market. Some of the simple things they bought which blew my mind were name cards from companies like Black Astrum, which could run from hundreds to thousands of dollars per card, buy sections of the bookstore. Like literally, the guy pointed out one whole section and just said he wanted one of every book they're shipped over. Later, I found out you can actually pay a bookstore to just ship over a whole library. Just tell them you want to look like an expert on anthropology or something, and they'll outfit a floor-to-ceiling library of anthropology books for you. Buy jewelry by the tray. They would close the store when these people walked in, and the wife would point at a tray in the display case, and they'd buy it all. We once received a gift of apples from a UH&W client. They were fancy Japanese apples, which cost around US $220 per apple. I got a box of 4, along with 10 other people in the office. They were amazing. They ask for things for free and get it. You'd think that's cheap of them, but they really do. I know one woman who asked for a specific serial number for a limited edition watch, and she actually asked if she could just have it. She got it for free. Also, they asked for free stuff like sweets, a new phone, when he lost it at a hotel, free pedicure services, etc. And they get it, probably because they spend so much and lend some celebrity status. I know a guy who, once in a while, goes through his employee list and pays off the school tuition or medical debts of a bunch of people. There is no regularity or reason to it. He just does it when he feels like it. Some of them have copies of magazines like Nominus on their coffee tables. I didn't realize how much of a flex that was until I realized Nominus cost from $2,500 to $5,000 per issue. Later, though, I found out some rich people get copies for free as a branding move. All those branded stores like Prada, Gucci, etc., many don't actually seem to care much. Some do, but not the ones I met. Most of them have a tailor they know by name, who makes bespoke pieces for them. I know some who didn't shop for clothes in a store for 3 or 4 years at a stretch. Good times. Story 26. Here is the thing about that kind of wealth. It doesn't buy you things. Things just exist. The real thing money buys you is freedom and time. Things are a necessity in terms of food, healthcare, etc., but anything is just stuff. Story 27. Asked my boss what he's doing for Christmas break. Family coming over for presents. In-laws coming over for presents. Movie night. Friend is driving our small yacht, our private chef, to our island in the Bahamas for the week, and we're flying private to meet them. I bet they deny my raise when I ask too. Story 28. Wake up and can do whatever the fudge they want. There is no urgency or having to work to provide. They literally have unlimited time and can buy Al and every service to free their time up. I want to go to the museum today, park, or let's go to Costa Rica. Story 29. At random. Not ultra rich, but I shared the apartment with some people in college. One of the roommates, we had never came out of his room, and his parents paid for an Indian granny to come every week and cook him a week's worth of fresh food. And let me tell you, every time she came over, all the rest of us were drooling and also kind of pissed because she took over the small kitchen for a few hours. He still ordered food delivery every single day, sometimes twice or 3 times a day, and always had the best electronics. He never came out of his room, never talked to us, and didn't seem to go to class frequently. I definitely thought that kid's family must be rich and trying to teach him how to slum it in a shared space. Story 30. Girl in college was from an African country. Sweetest, nicest person. She asked to sit with me at breakfast one morning. Fascinating conversation, totally down to earth. Spoke to her roommate later, who described her life basically as Prince Akeem's from Coming to America. She had pet giraffe and elephants, etc. I thought she was joking. She said she refers to home as my father's country. She then said, let me tell you about last week. She decided she didn't want to bum rides and wanted a car. The roommate described listening to her call her father and ask for a car, and her father telling go to the Mercedes dealership in 2 days Saturday. I'll arrange it. That weekend, she drove her to the Mercedes dealership where the owner met this 19-year-old. He told her her father has arranged for one of every model they had, in every color they had. Whichever she didn't choose, they were shipping to him. The car haulers were waiting in the lot to load them. She chose the silver S600. They shipped 33 cars to her dad. Her ballpark math was somewhere around 1.5 to 2 million just for the purchase. This was the middle of America, so getting 33 cars on international shipping vessel probably was a few bucks. All so she wouldn't have to worry or make any real decisions other than to choose and drive away. Story 31. Why do they always assume that getting together means spending money? The majority of my friends are rich, like 2 houses, vacation in another country rich. I barely leave my city. When we plan to hang out, they always suggest getting lunch or dinner. Last time I asked if we could do something they didn't involve much money, like going to a park or stay in, the answer, you can always come after dinner if you don't want to have dinner with us. It's frustrating. Answer, I don't think that's wealthy specific. Everyone I know now that we're in our 30s assume getting together means we have to do some sort of activity. No one gets together for tea and a chit-chat anymore like my mom's days. My best friend and I have started cooking dinner for each other instead of going out to eat though. We still do other things together too, but more frequently we stay in, cook, and watch a movie now. People wonder how I managed to make so much time for her, but it's really just that she's my most affordable friend, therefore the one I'm able to see the most. Story 32. Consistency in investing. The richest person I know consistently invests in index funds and rarely targets individual stocks. Additionally, they do it all themselves and don't pay people to manage it for them. Story 33. Charter a private jet to take the family on vacation. More of a rich than ultra-rich who can have personal jets. Once you've ponied up first class for parents, kids, and nannies, you're close enough to the cost of a smaller charter. You pick your own travel times, skip the airport security mess. Don't have to wait in airport lounges, and can usually have your limousine drive up to the jet to pick up your luggage. Story 34. They can make multiple high-risk investments. If 1 in 30 makes it, then they are well in the black. I had a friend who started a successful business. He made some risky investments, one of which is currently paying out at $100K every year and is likely to double in the next 5 to 10 years. There were 20 or so that he lost almost all his investment, but in 3 years he has made all that money back. Now it is just profit. Story 35. See something you want and be able to instantly buy it without even knowing or caring about the price. My jerk sees something cool online and has to ponder whether it's worth the amount of hours I had to work to afford it. Story 36. Hosted a dinner at the home of a noble family in Scotland a few years ago, and the Duke was showing me around a few weeks beforehand. Told me a story about how depressed he was when an art appraiser, looking at one of his paintings, told him the painting was not by a student of Goya, but was in fact by Goya himself. He was unhappy because the 15 million jump in value meant he would have to redo his insurance paperwork. He already had to use 2 different insurance companies to cover the total value previously. Other things I found there: original Da Vinci sketches hanging over a toilet under the staircase in a servant's hallway, a Gutenberg Bible and a stack of books on the floor in a spare room, and on it went. Story 37. The one thing I have seen consistently with my very wealthy friends is the attitude of how can they make the money they make work for them to make more. As average person is thinks, what can I buy? What would they make? Instead of how can I make more? Story 38. Having a private doctor. One that comes to your house when called. There are actually physician groups that cater to this type of wealth. Would love to be part of one, but I understand the buy-in is very high. Story 39. Eat out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My daughter has made friends with a particularly wealthy family, and the mother and the father are pretty much useless human beings. The dad works and does nothing else. The mom goes to the gym and does nothing else. Nobody in the family cooks, so they eat out for every meal. Story 40. I live in a town with a high concentration of very wealthy people. The amount of redecorating some of these people do is unreal. I know one couple that completely refurnished their large home twice in 4 years. Story 41. I used to do pest control for the wealthy. Been in a lot of mansions. The one that threw me off the most was customer that asked, "Oh, did you get the panic room behind the bookcase?" The what behind the where? Those people also had an outdoor life-size chess set on a travertine checkerboard and like 3 pools with a rock bridge formation over the courtyard inside their house. Story 42. When booking once-a-week appointments for your child, coach, therapist, tutor, etc., pay 7x to hold one-time slot every day rather than just once a week. That way, if the child is traveling or just not in the mood, they can go on Saturday rather than on Monday. The other 6 go unused, but who cares? My K per week is the same thing as 1K per week. Edit, spelling. Story 43. I went to high school in Seattle with the daughter of a very well-known billionaire of an even better well-known coffee chain. I always thought her and her brother were really down to earth, and our parents were members of the same athletic club. I remember it was always great being at their house because of the immediacy of which things arrived if we wanted them. Felt like an out? Let's fly to California and get some. Want to go hang out with our friends across the water? We can just take the yacht there. Or renting a presidential suite in a 5-star hotel, like an apartment for several months in the summer. They were really nice people, though. Story 44. I looked into buying what amounts to old folks' home insurance. I wanted a policy I could pay so that if one or both of us needs to spend years being cared for, not on our own medically, we'd be covered. Insurance companies do offer this, but in at least one case you need a $500K in liquid assets for them to even offer it to you. It was explained to me that this is what wealthy people do so that the money they pass on to their descendants is separate from the money used for the last years of their life, or something. If I sound vague, it's because I don't have $500K in liquid assets, so it really didn't matter after that. Story 45. I once met a man that bought a $5 million house about an hour away from his actual house simply because his wife didn't like him smoking cigars at home. He would only use the house to smoke in and have a party or 2 a year. Story 46. Indeed, if it is well known, but most customer service lines have a special line for rich people, celebrities. Just about every customer service line I have ever worked has a whole VIP department. I guarantee you they don't get the slightest pushback. The company will eliminate itself to make them happy. Also, they get better service. When I worked at DirectV, one of the VIPs called me. They had 27 TVs. I'm talking outside TVs. TVs in every shitter, shower TVs. With literally every channel, PPV included. DirectTV was pretty much paying them to have the service. Story 47. A guy I knew worked for a company that booked reservations for the rich and famous. Their agents, managers, etc. would contact the company with a vague list of what the person wanted to do and when, where, and it was up to him to make that happen. Sounded like a nightmare of a job, but it paid well from what I remember him telling me. Story 48. I worked for a billionaire for a bit. He was the most chill dude, didn't act like he had money at all. I built him a bike park on 300 acres. It was so much fun. He was like 65 and just wanted to shred his bike. Worked for Lockheed and created the cloud for IBM. Story 49. I do a lot of work for a ridiculously wealthy couple. One thing I saw that springs to mind is having a helicopter drop them off at the end of their driveway and having their car and driver waiting take them from the end of the gravel driveway to the house. It's probably a 35-second walk. It took them longer to get into the car than it would for an ordinary person to walk it. Story 50. During the pandemic, I had a theater room added to my home. Mainly it was because I thought the theater industry would be crippled. In some ways it was, but not how I thought it would be. Still, though, haven't had a need to go to a movie theater in years. I'm actually really glad I did it. Story 51. Just being able to actually do what you want instead of what you have to do every day. I never even think of what I'm going to do in a given day because it's pretty much laid out for me. Work, home, bed. Then come the weekend, I do what I can afford, which is not much. Being rich gives you the power of choice. Story 52. Taking a trip to a location using a private jet that will cost them more than most people's car. Some trips, singular, costing almost $10K in fuel and pilot hours. A round trip could literally be $20K, the price of any mid-sized car that they just spent on the weekend getting to their function, whatever that function is. Story 53. Buying single-use underwear. Buying every unit of a particular pair of glasses so you never have to search for them again. Getting the heels of one's loafers shaved by a 34th of an inch so that you didn't have to get used to the new height. Design all your holiday homes to have the exact same layout so you don't have to bump into things to find your way around in the night. Story 54. I'm a detailer and we go to the same customers. Let's call him AB House every single Sunday. And AB has a net worth in the ballpark of 9 figures. Yesterday when we arrived on his property, there was a Ford Explorer sitting on the road leading to the hangar where we washed the vehicles. I jokingly said, "This man has hired the feds." After a couple of hours of working, we contact AB, who is normally not home, just to let him know there's someone sitting on his property. He says, "Oh, that's the sheriff. No worries. We're obviously both like, what the fudge?" Later in the day, the sheriff rotates out with a deputy. So as we're leaving, we decide to ask the deputy what's going on. He didn't even know what the deal was. All he said was that they were hired to watch the property 247 for 7 days straight and that they are being paid $10,000. Yesterday, I learned you can hire the sheriff's department. Story 55. Ultra rich don't buy things. They just desire and it's there, meaning they have a team of people who wait around for them to mention something in passing and purchase it for them on the off chance they want to use it. Story 56. Have enough money to pay for every little inconvenience and then some with style. Have a cold? How about a 5-star vacation to the beaches of Indonesia to warm you up? Have a headache? How about a 2-year-long vacation to British Columbia to cool your head down? Hungry? How about 5-star food for every meal? Efficiency in your schedule is low? How about paying everyone out the wazoo to do everything for you so you can have more time to relax and make more money? Think you're ugly? There's plastic surgery. Don't have enough friends? The dollar is your friend. The list goes on and on. Story 57. Exotics can get a little upset if let's have for too long. Plus, when you get someone in town just for, say, 5 days, every other month, they won't have time to get an oil change, wash their Ferrari, etc. Makes sense to just pay someone to have it ready when needed. Story 58. Interesting, I am not wealthy, but I do keep my reasonably priced classic car in a classic car storage facility that houses mind-blowing exotics. My car is orders of magnitude less valuable than most anything there. I was out of town and got a message from the garage stating that they noticed my car's inspection was coming due soon, and if they can run it to one of their shops for a quick pass as a courtesy. I was floored and felt so strange taking them up on the offer. No taking a day off work, calling places to schedule. It was just done. It was so nice to have that taken care of, but it blew me away since that is the life of the ultra-wealthy. Nearly every day with everything. Story 59. My housemate at university had a younger sister living near us in a condo their dad bought for her. She was 18 and her boyfriend was 40. When it was time to graduate, the dad called and asked me, I was working at a real estate company as the receptionist, if I could tell them to just sell the condo and they could keep the profit. Neither could be bothered, so I said I'd do it. He told me his goal here was to have his kids do anything, just something to make a living. Mind you, my housemate borrowed $40,000 from him to start a business which became very successful, and he paid his dad back in full with interest in 6 months. Story 60. My wife had to travel for business and is staying at a house owned by number 3 in her company. She's been there for a few months. Holy fudge, this house. The kid is a Xanaxed out ghost I've never seen when visiting. The parents are loaded and waiting for her to finish college to sell it. First time I saw it, I couldn't believe this was all for a 19-year-old. It's 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, a giant kitchen, pool. They reimbursed my wife for the furniture she bought while staying there and asked if they can keep it for the next roommate. Wife. Say no more. Story 61. Not always a rich folks thing. I've known a few middle-class people over the years who've made deals with their kids' friends. The deal was usually along the following terms. It'll buy a livable fixer-upper house, walkable to campus, and will let you and your friends live there rent-free. My terms are that you and anyone living there attend college while living there, and each of you devote 16-ish hours per month to doing renovations with me. By the time the kid finished school, the fixer-upper was fully renovated, and they were able to sell for a significant profit. Story 62. Lol, I saw that in college too. Rich classmate from Asia graduated and was basically selling most of his belongings he didn't want to take back home. Basically selling his stuff for pennies on the dollar. Got a nice monitor from him in exchange for a boba tea. Story 63. I remember reading an article with the headline something along the lines of couple saves 1 million by 30. It started off with them getting married right out of college. Wife's parents gift them $250K, which they then buy a house, but rent it out instead and live with grandma. Husband gets big cushy exec job working at father-in-law's company. Wife ends up in marketing at tech firm or something like that. Basically, they were handed some big wins. They saved close to 100K every year. The whole article was like, look at their frugality. They didn't do vacations or buy luxury cars and are now millionaires, totally glossing over the nepotism that got them there. Story 64. My family's in education and has known a couple people who've ended up in the orbit of the super rich. My sister graduated with her master's at a time when our state had a hiring freeze. My sister was one of few people hired right before it went into effect. She had a friend that ended up being a nanny in LA. One couple she worked for had like 4 nannies, 3 for the days for each kid, 1 for the nights. That couple had huge issues with paparazzi, so the nannies had to usually take the kids shopping for school unless the parents were able to sneak around. My sister's friend ended up moving on to even richer people whose lives were quieter because they didn't have media attention, paid more, and the people could live more like people. Also knew someone who took a year off from his normal teaching gig because some ultra-wealthy guy wanted to yacht around the world with his kids, so he wanted private tutors. The guy brought his kids along and basically had a one-room schoolroom on a super yacht. Story 65. I mean, it's a thing that's getting more and more popular for primary school in the U.S. as public school infrastructure crumbles. It's called a homeschool collective, and the more money you throw into it, the less you have to contribute as a parent. There's a lot of excellent, burnt-out teachers with kids. Story 66. I heard of an optician in D.C. who had a limo pull up in front of his store, and a Middle Eastern man in expensive robes got out with his bodyguard. After browsing a little, the bodyguard came to the counter with a nice pair of Ray-Bans and said, "Well, take 20 of these." The optician half-jokingly asked if it was one for every room of the house, but the bodyguard with a flat look corrected, "No, one for every house." I also had a friend who hired on as house maintenance for someone rich. Her job was to keep a steady supply of exactly the right perishable foods available in all this person's houses and on constant rotation to keep it fresh, so they would immediately have exactly what they liked available to eat if they decided on impulse to go to any particular house. Answer. My wife works in an ultra-luxury watch store. Average prices for the pieces they have on hand are usually between $75K and $200K. Some specialty pieces go up to $700, $800K, and a few one-off pieces can sometimes go for over $1 million. One day, this kid walks in, maybe 16 or 17, wearing sandals and swimming trunks, which isn't odd for a beach town during tourist season, but definitely not their typical clientele. They still treat him like any other customer, and he browses some watches, tries on a few, and leaves. A couple hours later, he comes back with his dad and is like, this one, and that one. Dad buys all 3 for something like $600K without batting an eye. Story 67. I've heard of this, but for expensive designer bags too. A client returned to buy another 8,000 bag in the exact same size and color. When a sales clerk asked if it's for gifting, since she has the bag already, the client replied, "No, this will be sent to my other home." Story 68. And it's often multiples of the exact same item. The same model car at each house, same appliances, same standard wardrobe, etc. It makes it marginally easier because you don't need to think about how the buttons changed, readjust to how a car drives, styles changed, etc. That plus location-specific items, ski gear stays at the villa, beach stuff stays at the beach house, etc. mean that they don't really need to pack. They just get in a car or on a plane and arrive with everything they need. Answer. Don't get this wrong, I'm not a rich guy, but I like to buy multiple items at once of the same thing when it comes to stuff like clothes. Maybe it has to do with how tall I am. So when I find the clothes or shoes that fit my size, I buy more than just one to have some reserves. Like my shoe size is 49.50 in the European standard that is used here. Don't know about US standards, but it is what NBA players like Kobe Bryant, etc. need to feel comfortable. Actually, Kobe was 1 and I'm 2.03 so you can imagine the sizes I need. LeBron James is a little bit taller with 2.06 meters. But again, it's funny with the clothes when people think I'd not change my clothes when in reality, it's just another new set that I wear. Story 69. To be fair, most people will have at least some clothes at their parents' house or partner's house if they don't live together yet to avoid this issue. I have 3 electric toothbrushes now because I kept forgetting it and had to use a regular one. 1 toothbrush at my apartment, 1 at the parents' house, and 1 at my boyfriend's apartment. I also keep all essentials of toiletries and a few sets of clothes at every home. Makes everything a lot easier. Story 70. Industrial designer Philippe Starck does this. He has a house in each country where he works and keeps an identical set of clothing and a motorcycle at each home. He can travel internationally with just a small backpack and never worry about forgetting things. He also dresses remarkably simply, a plain white t-shirt and black jeans with a jacket. Story 71. Yep, I've got a brother-in-law who's a general contractor and caters to the super wealthy. He built a whole jerk home for his family using almost nothing but the salvage from his renovations. He'd ask the homeowners if they minded if he kept anything out of the stuff he removed, and pretty much all of them were delighted to let him take it. Rather see it get reused than sent to the dump. Now he's got a front door worth $20K and a mortgage worth 10 the value of the house. Story 72. I was amazed to discover that some well-off people buy season tickets for theaters, so they have the same seat for every show, usually the best seats in the house. Edited to add, I discovered this by talking to people I was sitting next to when I went to shows in a few different venues. In those venues, season tickets were $1,500 a year minimum, as we discovered when my DH explored buying me one for my birthday. Sadly, that was well out of our budget. Plus, they would usually buy a pair of tickets. Answer, oh God, that's just reminded me of my godparents who I used to babysit for when I was younger. We lived close enough to Stratford-upon-Avon for it to be a reasonable evening out. They bought season tickets to the Royal Shakespeare Company's entire portfolio for the year. I'd dislike to know how much that cost, especially when you added my $25.30 every time they went out. Though he was a pretty high-flying lawyer who at one point called me up because he'd been doing some work for a luxury car brand, and they'd just given him one of their show cars for the weekend as an informal thank you. Story 73. That's why Billy Joel used to not sell the first 2 rows of his shows. He'd have his roadies randomly take people from the back and offer them seats in the front instead of the usual group of rich guys. Story 74. In Naples, FL, there's a club that has a wait list. It costs $30,000 to get on the wait list, but there is no guarantee you'll be selected that year. Every year you have to pony up another $30K to stay on the list. Story 75. In fairness, if you don't know her real name, then you don't know whether she's Googleable. But also, if you're that rich that everything you own is in someone else's name and you're not working, then there probably isn't much to Google about you, especially if you're just the child or close relative of someone uber wealthy. Story 76. God, imagine thinking, hey, I want to go mountain biking, and 1 hour later have the most dialed mountain bike ever waiting for you completely kitted out with helmet, the gear, and pads. Took me years to save up for it. Imagine getting that all delivered on a whim in an hour. Story 77. I'm a coin collector. This shop I went to, I never spent a lot, but I got on well with the owner. I come in one Sunday and he's grinning. Yesterday was good business. What? You're closed on Saturdays, he tells me. No, look at the sign on the door. And I never noticed it said closed to the public Saturdays. And he shows me the receipt. He had customers who would call him up like, Jack, I'm in town next week. See you on Saturday. Make sure the whiskey rocks are cold. And they just come in and chat and flip through the boxes. I'll have this. I'll have that. It was ridiculous what was on that receipt, like a dozen 1/0's gold coins, 10 rolls of uncirculated silver coins, a 10/0's gold bar, 2 bricks of 100 mint banknotes with consecutive serial numbers. And he further explained sometimes these guys would call him up like, yeah, Jack, I know, it's 11 p.m. You're probably in bed, but Jack, you gotta tell me you have some Krugerrands. The Saudi prince is coming, and I'm at the Royal Palazzarino Roni Hotel, Napoleon Suite. Come on, Jack. My driver will pick you up. You can open late tomorrow. Come on, I'll pay 15 over market price. And the dude would get out of bed, call up some other dealer, get the gold bars or whatever, and show up and drop them off to some dude. That's why the whole boutique scene is so amusing. Like you want to have breakfast at Tiffany's. Ha ha, no can do. Oh, wait, you're Bill Gates. You would like to have a continental breakfast buffet set up at Tiffany's so you can eat here whilst Melinda browses the collection. Why certainly, Mr. Gates. Story 78. I live in an uber-wealthy town full of boutiques. There is a lot of new money, unfortunately, and it is a social thing for women to take their kids and husbands to watch them try on and buy clothing downtown. The problem? It is all literal shoot qualify that you could get on Amazon for like $500 for a sweatshirt, and they buy it. Want to find the old money? Go to the local thrift store on Saturday AM. It is all older model BMW, Jeep, Volvo, and Classic card. No Escalades or Maseratis like downtown. Story 79. The idea that furniture and home decor have fashions or seasons, that you might rip out the carpeting or tile and have it redone because it isn't in style anymore. It's so beyond me that people waste perfectly good stuff, like let me throw this couch in the garbage because I'm tired of the color. Story 80. A guy I know's trophy wife made an organization business that was featured on local morning television. She demonstrated the family's fridge, which had a bunch of plastic bins with Cricut labels on them. The fridge was barely a third full, but what impressed me was that, regardless of what each bin was actually labeled, fully 5 of them contained various forms of yogurt. It was a handful of condiment bottles, some pesto, because of course she had to point out the pesto, and then a shoot ton of yogurt. It was like the guy married an Activia commercial. The funny thing is, she also demoed the chalkboard, not a whiteboard, no. Gotta look like you're a cafe, with the family's week of planned meals, all obviously designed to impress with her sophistication and status. Except that aside from the tub of pesto, no ingredients for those meals actually existed in the fridge. Story 81. I have an uncle who has all of the money. Since the time that I was a little kid, I would spend summers with him. We'd go out for the day, him, his kids, and me, and do fun shoot, and then we'd arrive home, and I'd go in the kitchen, and it would have all been replenished and fully stocked again. And I would be all, man, this is a magical house. Took me a minute to figure out what was going on. Story 82. I looked into this when I was going to work in Oman. I wasn't allowed to tell anyone I had kidnap insurance, including my wife, and premiums would go down if I went through a hostage training program. They literally told me it would be a lot easier if I just converted to Islam. I ended up in West Texas instead, which was easier because everyone's very polite and they all have open carry. Story 83. I used to work in insurance, and our company had pre-approved mercenaries on call to hire when someone got kidnapped. Rich people will also insure anything: legs, hair, other body parts. I've even heard about alien abduction insurance. Story 84. Some billionaire just tried that in Duluth, MN. She then threatened to sue anyone who reported on it or asked questions. Then after that caused public backlash and had the mayor wanting to talk to her, she is now backing out and tried to say she had plans for the good of community. Story 85. Who was this? I'd be curious to read about what projects he wanted to help build up. I know a pretty wealthy person that donates to some awesome charities that actually help people that need it. All out of pocket, not just shifting money to a cell phone charity, but to places that put that money to work. Edit, I'm an American. But if I was as loaded as your deceased client, it'd 100 be sailing along the Mediterranean between those areas. Beautiful places that I hope to see someday. Story 86. I took the ferry from Vancouver to Victoria to eat dinner with my buddy who was visiting from Belgium. It was delicious and somewhat expensive for me at the time. We just ate dinner and left. No sightseeing. Story 87. Just tailoring everything in general. Their clothes look good not only because their bodies look good, but because they're all tailored to fit them perfectly, when they're not getting things made for them, specifically at least. Story 88. Yep, my grandparents were friends with a very rich, retired couple. They had a vacation home in a large southern city. My parents mentioned wanting to visit that city. My grandparents made a call, and we were told to just pick some dates, and the house was ours. There was a new SUV in the garage. We were told to just leave the house, however, just walk away, and their normal maid service would be a post-visit, cleaning and setup for the next time the house was needed. When we arrived, the maids had turned down the beds, had flowers in the kitchen, there was a cheese plate in the fridge for us, beers, soda, and water, a nice saying to help ourselves to the liquor cabinet, and a number for the local maids if we had any questions. It was darn impressive. This wasn't a mansion, just a more normal 5-bed, 4K square foot type place, but I felt like a king. Story 89. This makes my partners and is worries that we overshopped on our trip to the U.S. feel much better, LOL. We worried we would be over the weight limit and have to pay extra for oversized luggage. Turned out we were still far off from the limit, though. I was expecting to have to start putting layers of shirts on and pulling out stuffed animals from Disney to carry on, and such LOL. I cannot even imagine how much shopping they did for 27 boxes and suitcases. Story 90. This so true and wild. My friend's dad worked in the rich people private medical suites of a major hospital in a nearby city. He was a very cheerful and well-liked guy. Some patients hired him privately in addition to the regular coordinators to help oversee the home setup for discharge and other things. He was paid very well on the audition. One patient literally built an addition in their mansion castle to create a medical center, and it included a private entrance and break room for staff so they wouldn't need to come through the main house. It was like they built a mini hospital, all top-of-the-line machines, equipment, etc. They are not supposed to accept direct gifts from patients, but it was his marriage anniversary coming up, and he would be taking some days off for a beach trip to celebrate. He told one of his patients this as just a why he wouldn't be in for a few days, and they gave him the name and number of their personal jeweler for a wife gift. The jeweler gave him an incredible discount, like an insane discount. He has also told stories that some patients have helped doctors or staff they like by making a call to help the doctor's kids get into private schools or elite country clubs, etc. Story 91. In 1829, Lockhart Castle was built in the South Lanarkshire of Scotland. In 1987, it was bought by a Japanese actor, dismantled brick by brick, and taken to Japan along the Siberian Railway. And in 1993, the castle was reconstructed in Gunma Prefecture, Japan. These days, it's a tourist attraction, castle theme park, and hosts weddings and special events. We were driving along the Japan Romantic Road, came around a bend in the road, and there it was, a Scottish castle in the middle of Japan. It was a completely bizarre sight. Story 92. One of Canada's richest couples, Jerry Schwartz and Heather Reisman, built an absolutely monster home in Toronto's Rosedale neighborhood. While it was under construction, they rented an apartment nearby for $60K a month. Apparently, they were hardly ever there and traveling most of the year. This was in the early 2000s, and housing costs in Toronto have doubled, so today's equivalent would likely be $100K. Story 93. Super smart. The good old Montana LLC. Don't have to be uber rich to do it. Just follow the steps. Some guys in Northern Virginia do with their Lambos, McLarens, Ferraris, etc., or just register an MD where there is no PP tax. Answer. Some guys in Northern Virginia do with their Lambos, McLarens, Ferraris, etc., or just register an MD where there is no PP tax. I don't think you can avoid the personal property tax by registering your vehicle out of state. For one thing, the tax isn't based on registration, but where the car is kept. In Arlington County, the tax is assessed on all motor vehicles that are garaged, regularly parked, overnight in Arlington County. In Loudoun County, the tax applies if the vehicle is garaged, parked, or stored in the county. And if you are a resident of Virginia, you are required to register the car in Virginia and display Virginia plates. Not doing so results in a penalty. Story 94. I just got back from Disneyland in California. If I was wealthy enough and my kids wanted to go badly enough, I would pay for that service. Disney was a nightmare of crowds and lines. Even their skip the line passes, Genie, doesn't really skip lines, maybe half the line and not for every ride. The crowds were so intense the kids wanted to leave by dinner time, and they could not stand being there any longer. Here we thought we were acting fancy paying for preferred parking to save ourselves extra walking upon leaving LOL. Story 95. My brother-in-law is an amazing professional chef. He was hired by a billionaire to be a full-time chef at one of his houses on a private island. The money was crazy, but he wound up leaving because he got bored out of his mind. The guy was never home, and the only people using the house were usually the billionaire's preteen kids who only wanted French fries and chicken fingers. ELL. Story 96. There are lots of rich people that still stay very busy with working and running businesses, but you're right, a lot do quit work or never have to if born into money. Others worked hard to get there, and that's just their personality type, to work hard. I've seen quite a few frugal rich people too. Story 97. I went on a manhunt once. I just got back from Nam. I was hitchhiking through Oregon. Next thing I know, there's a bunch of cops chasing after me through the woods. I had to take them all out. It was a bloodbath. Story 98. My college roommate's dad was a Yankee player, and said roommate apparently loved to cook and would fill our fridge with food we were not allowed to eat, and then go out to 4 to 5-star restaurants for every meal. If we asked to use or eat his food, he'd charge us. Story 99. I don't think that's wealthy specific. Everyone I know now that we're in our 30s assume getting together means we have to do some sort of activity. No one gets together for tea and a chit-chat anymore, like my mom's days. My best friend and I have started cooking dinner for each other instead of going out to eat, though. We still do other things together, too, but more frequently we stay in, cook, and watch a movie now. People wonder how I manage to make so much time for her, but it's really just that she's my most affordable friend, therefore the one I'm able to see the most. Story 100. If you're close enough, it might be worth talking to them about picking up the tab. My husband, I have several wealthy friends who, like our company, know we make way less money, so they always pay for us. I still offer to pay maybe every fifth time out just to make sure, but they seem genuinely happy to treat us. None of them grew up rich, so that might be a factor. They can afford to treat their friends to still remember what it was like to not be in that position. Story 101. I've known at least one person like this. His solution to any problem I casually mentioned that I was going through was, "Why don't you just buy?" And then he would go on to say how good of an investment it was. The thought never even occurred to him that I literally did not possess the amount of money required to purchase said item. Story 102. Auto investing in broad index funds is the way, VOO, VTI, etc. Even when you're in the millions, no need to overcomplicate things with a financial planning until you are tenant millionaires, and then you have to worry more about estate planning and taxes, etc. Story 103. As average person is thinks, what can I buy, what would they make, instead of how can I make more? The average person these days is aware of investments as a means to grow wealth. It's just very hard to do that when you need that money for petty things like food and rent. Story 104. The first time I visited LA, we drove around Beverly Hills. I was so excited to see a lemon tree. I grew up with snow. I only stole one lemon, so not sure if that makes me a whore, but definitely a lemon-stealing floozy. Story 105. They don't say you need money to make money for nothing. A friend of mine starting his own business has burned through over $1 million in loans and seed money so far. Hasn't made anything back yet. If it works out for him, he'll be a multimillionaire. If it doesn't, he's fudged because he's bet everything on it. For the ultra-rich, they can do this 20 times over, and it doesn't matter if a bunch of them fail or just break even. Answer. Entrepreneurship is like one of those carnival games where you throw darts or something. Middle-class kids can afford one throw. Most miss. A few hit the target and get a small prize. A very few hit the center bullseye and get a bigger prize. Rags to riches. The American dream lives on. Rich kids can afford many throws. If they want to, they can try over and over and over again until they hit something and feel good about themselves. Some keep going until they hit the center bullseye. Then they give speeches or write blog posts about meritocracy and the salutary effects of hard work. Poor kids aren't visiting the carnival. They're the ones working it. Source, Story 106. She was 18 and her boyfriend was 40. This was honestly the part that raised my eyebrows the most. I get that an 18-year-old is a consenting adult and can do whatever TF she wants, but kinda odd for a man in his 40s to go for a chick who a year ago had to ask for permission to go to the restroom. Story 107. Same, it's something my mom always said she wished she could do for me because I have a fine arts degree. And the rich fine arts degree kids had an instant revenue source after graduation, while I had to put creativity on hold and get an office job. Story 108. Person I know has 2 kids, 2 maids, 2 nannies. Hasn't had a job in 10 years. Her idea of a weekend is trip to Japan or Malaysia or something. Airport pickup, straight to resort kind of thing. The kids dislike outdoor stuff. The husband always has work, so he never comes. So it's her at the pool sipping drinks, kids in the hotel suite watching TV, nannies catering to them, spending many thousands of dollars for a weekend of boring nothing. Story 109. This is one of those classy if you're rich, trashy if you're poor things. Poor people certainly have informal summer camp where whoever doesn't have a job watches all the kids for while everyone else works. Answer. My dad was a teacher, so we would always have our friends join us on our summer adventures. He also loved spending time with his 3 kids doing stuff all summer anyways, so it worked out well, and the friends we brought along are all close with my parents still. Felt bad that my mom had to work in the summer while us 4 did random stuff, but she also only worked monteur, so we'd always leave town for 3 days weekends all summer. As an adult without kids, I would totally take my friends' kids if they wanted to go canoe or swim or fish or whatever. If I had the time off from work to do such things, it's a lot of fun for me to do without them, so I'd enjoy the extra company.